with Jirachi and Zapdos, but he's also got his own twist here as well with the likes of the Lycanroc, Buzzwole, and Beast Rings available to him. So he's playing a very unorthodox list, as is his forte, and we are seeing Isaiah with a much more straightforward build of Zapdos Jirachi that we've come to see so much throughout this tournament. And both players are getting ready now, putting down their basic Pokemon. They also need to get some prize cards ready to go, as they are just doing here. And we can begin this game. We see Tapu Koko GX in the prize cards. Not a big deal. A couple Jirachis could be a little bit awkward for him, though. Guzma as well is always something that's a resource you keep your eye out for. I think a couple Stellar Wish Jirachi is definitely going to be something that's a little awkward for him, as we are seeing Karl put down a couple of supporter cards. You can see he does play the basic fighting energy because he is Beast Ring focused rather than Robin and Bert's rainbow-based builds. But looks like both players are ready to go here.
All right, we're going to be getting game number 1 underway as we see a Jirachi in the active for Karl and an Oranguru for Isaiah. Karl definitely getting the better end of the stick here, I would say. Jirachi is the ideal Pokemon that you want to start. You can just Stellar Wish right off the bat.
It's immediately what he's gone for. Grabbed himself a Volkner as well. Having Zapdos already in the back is always great. I think if you're going first, your priority is trying to get something like an Absol down, because you want to make it as difficult for Isaiah to get an attack off. But Isaiah's already led with an Oranguru, so potentially Karl can just simply go for Nest Balls to find more Jirachis on his own end here and just get more Stellar Wishes going.
And immediately my eyes are drawn to the deck from Karl Peters. It is blinged out. It is beautiful. He's a man of style. And we'll see if that reflects in his play.
Yeah, I mean, he
Maybe
likes to be stylish with his cards, and the 60 cards within them as well are always going to be a little... He's an eccentric character, Karl. He's a very interesting player to talk to and test with. And yeah, he always likes to bring his own twist on a tournament. I think he likes to be someone who's more of a meta breaker than someone that likes to just stick with the crowd. He'll always try and have his own twist on whatever he thinks is going to give him the best chance to win here. Karl, I was speaking to him this morning, actually, and he was saying, well, this Lycanroc gives me a real good chance against the Zoroark players in the field. And he can also use Wobbuffet as well to Shady Tail to deny players from using Ditto Prism Star. So he has so many answers. He seemed to be very keen on defeating Zoroark players, and I think that might be one of the big reasons why he's done so well this weekend.
I mean, every player has their own personal style. You have some players who like to be very defensive, some who like to make the opponent have the answers be very aggressive, and then you've got your innovators, your meta breakers, and Karl just seems to fall into that category. But it's really exciting to see, because we get to see so many of these players on stream, you know, repeatedly, even multiple times within a certain tournament, and then you sort of start to see their individual play style emerging over the course of a tournament. And that's exciting for me from a viewer perspective, because I don't know many of these players personally, so getting a chance to sort of know them through their gameplay is really nice.
Yeah, Isaiah with a pretty slow start here. Oranguru is an awful lead in the deck for him, and he's just had to fire off a Cynthia without playing any other cards in his hands, so very rough from him. Karl already happy to get an escape board on his Jirachi, and he's pretty much set up for turn 2. Isaiah really hoping that he can be the first one to draw blood here and take a knockout on a Jirachi, but it looks like his hand isn't going to be so great. I think he does have Jirachi, lots of Electro Powers, no switching card for his own Oranguru, I don't believe, so this is going to be pretty slow from him. Just a lot of the Electro Powers all bunched together. That's really rough from him. He may choose to just pitch all of them here.
But right now is not the time.
He could honestly just pitch all of them right now and just try and instruct for 2 cards. That would be so insane to see it. You would think it's really counterintuitive.
So bad.
It would put him having to Guzma a lot this game. We're going to see him do 1 and 1 instruct, gets him Ultra Ball. It could have been, it honestly could have been all 3 in instruct there. I don't know if that was right or not, but
he played that turn very slow.
Yeah, the outcome is his turn was pretty poor. That's really rough. The worst starter in his deck, he just plays 1 copy of Oranguru as opposed to 4 copies of Jirachi, which is your ideal. And he plays so many Switch and Escape Rope. I believe it's 3 copies of each. Yeah, it's 3 copies of each, so you would never really feel that's going to be too detrimental to you, but his Cynthia got him nothing helpful. And now Karl is going to be the one taking the advantage. The one good thing for Isaiah is Oranguru has 120 hit points, so it does force a lot from Karl. But if Karl uses something like the Escape Rope in his hand, life's going to get pretty tough for Isaiah here. And we're going to see Karl, use another Stellar Wish and get even more hand advantage. He's just in a commanding position in this first game 1 here.
Picks up his second Volkner, and using that is just able to fish those item cards out of the deck. He found an escape rope from the previous Volkner on turn 1, and now can start to shore up some of these knockouts here, can pick off what few Pokemon that Isaiah has in play. And Karl, having seen Isaiah with such a weak turn 1, can start to get a read on what exactly he's got in his hand and figures it's no good.
Yeah.
He knows he's pretty significantly in the lead right now.
It does not take much to know when the turn like that is poor. Karl already with the escape rope in hand. Now he's going to pick up a Guzma with his second Stellar Wish. I think that's one key difference between Isaiah and Karl's builds, is Karl is going for the full 4 copies of Volkner. Isaiah playing 0 copies, just going for Lily's, Cynthia's, and Professor Kukui's as his main supporters. Karl going to continue to develop his hand for future turns, gets himself a Lightning Energy, an Electro Power. All he needs is Lightning on Zapdos. He already has Escape Rope, Guzma for next turn. He's got everything prepared for now and for next turn as well already.
All right, he's going to go ahead and use that Escape Rope.
It's just going to be a Thunder
Zapdos
Assault.
up.
Yeah.
Early knockout onto the Jirachi.
He's also going to put down the Shady Tail Wobbuffet. It can deny Isaiah from using Tapu Koko, Prism Star, from getting any random attackers out of nowhere. Karl, I think, just trying to lower his own hand size at this point. There's not too much reason to not put down his own Wobbuffet here, just thinning it from his own hand. I believe he's thinking that he is really far ahead. And if Isaiah's going to have any sort of hand disruption, you want to be prepared for it, because Karl's board is already nicely prepared with a couple Jirachi, couple Zapdos. There's not much reason to hold on to the Wobbuffet, to be honest. Isaiah, once again, living on instructs here, Ultra Balling his hand down.
He has an Oranguru and a Dream.
Yes.
His Dream is supporter cards.
And it's not those.
Oh
I believe it's Escape Rope Lightning Energy, though. So that's enough.
Yes.
The Dream is alive. Karl already has Guzma in hand here, and he might... There's an Electro Power that has been played, so even the Wobbuffet can get knocked out. I believe Karl may just be sacrificing the Wobbuffet here. It seems to be the weakest card on his board, unless he wants to go for a Zapdos. You can see that's exactly the 2 cards that he's eyeing up. If he's valuing the Wobbuffet, he's just trying to deny Isaiah something like Tapu Koko GX coming onto the field out of nowhere. But yeah, I think it's correct to just deal with a Wobbuffet here. It's not doing a huge amount in this game. If ever Isaiah is going to bring out a GX attacker, you're never too upset about that.
Yeah, he sort of just played the Wobbuffet to empty out his hand a little bit here, but Isaiah needs to take that knockout, pick up hopefully a very useful prize card, because these instructs have not been kind to him. And Karl's just going to go into his 3rd turn really being able to utilize Jirachi yet again. He's got that Rockruff set up to be able to evolve into Lycanroc and use Bloodthirsty Eyes when it's most useful to him. And then, of course, a pair of Zapdos on the bench. So it's really going quite well for him so far, whereas Isaiah is sort of honestly playing to the top of his deck right now.
Yes, he really is. Karl currently just nest-balling out another Zapdos. He's going to also use his Stellar Wish. He does have Guzma available to him, and he may just be eyeing up a second Electro Power here if it's in the top 5 cards of his deck, because then he could be knocking out either the Absol or the Oranguru, just with that extra damage buff.
Doesn't look like he found it, though.
No. With 1 Electro Power, he can deal with the Absol, and that means that he can just keep using as many Stellar Wishes as possible. But right now, Isaiah not doing much. I think Karl would have really preferred to have found a second Electro Power here, because knocking out the Oranguru would have meant Isaiah is, again, just literally only drawing 1 card for his next turn to try and get him out of this rut. So it's a small whiff from Karl. Absol doing its job right now, making him not able to simply retreat out his Jirachi unless he wants to attach his manual Lightning Energy for turn onto that just to get an extra retreat in. It depends how greedy he has to go, but I think conservative is fine. You're already ahead. Dealing with an Absol is already a pretty strong turn, and it means now he can commit an energy to a second Zapdos. Electro Power is going to get him his 2nd prize of the game, and he's keeping up with the tempo here. His board's still far superior to Isaiah's.
Thunderous Assault, knock out the Absol, unlock the power of the Jirachi yet again. He can now hopefully Stellar Wish multiple times in a single turn, but Isaiah is just... He's left with pennies.
He's been trying so hard, this Oranguru, just not getting him the goods that he needs.
He can instruct for another couple cards here this turn.
Well, this is what he's just got. These are the instructions from Oranguru. That's all he's working with this turn. Just nest ball and nothing.
Oh, jeez, he did it so fast I even missed it.
Yep, there was nothing else to do. So that's all he's got going.
He knows he can play supporter cards, right?
Yeah, it's allowed. He does play 11
Oy.
draw supporters and 4 Guzmas. So
That's
pretty
unfortunate.
yucky instructs overall. And I think the debate here is not if I'm just passing, it's if I'm conceding the game here. GX v non-GX fight, you need to have time to take 6 physical prize cards. That's a lot of physical turns for both players.
Don't think he's going to be able to come back from a 2 prize deficit now when Karl inevitably takes another one next turn.
I think it is just a pass. Karl slamming an escape rope down straight away. Wasting no time there. He already has Guzma as well in his hand, I believe. He's been holding on to. Karl this time does need to get an Electro Power from one of his Stellar Wishes if he is going to take another prize card this turn. That's the only saving grace for Isaiah. No easy 70 hit point Pokemon to deal with. Karl's just going to go straight into a Zapdos. I believe he's holding on to Volkner, but
Yeah,
he actually drew an Electro Power for turn as well. Why not?
All right, so there's going to be 110 damage that he needs to take the knockout on the Zapdos, and he can Volkner this turn, maybe get himself another Electro Power, the third of the game, just to set up for a prize next turn as well.
Yeah, I don't see why not. It means next turn he has guaranteed Guzma on Absol for game, and Isaiah sees it on the wall. Yeah, there's no way that he's going to come back in that game, and he needs to buy himself as much time as possible. 39 minutes on the clock is still a reasonable amount of time in order to conclude 3 games in total. But Karl there, definitely with a superior start. He does have all the answers that Isaiah has. They're both playing Absol. They're both playing lots of Jirachi, lots of Zapdos, and I think the telling difference there was that Karl is playing Volkner in his list, allowing him to guarantee switching cards, whereas Isaiah was just hoping off a Cynthia, and it gave him nothing.
Yeah, I mean, the Volkners obviously are not always going to be very effective, and usually you would rather have a Lily on turn 1 or a Cynthia just to get 6 fresh cards. But the ability to pick and choose which of those particular item cards you want at any point in time. Obviously, we saw Karl was able to take consecutive prizes because he was able to pick those Electro Powers out with Volkner. He was able to take an escape board and get going with Stellar Wish on Jirachi very early. It just played to the strengths of his deck very nicely. And we're saying Karl brought something a little bit different here because he is running the Rockruff and the Lycanroc GX in his deck, but we didn't even get to see that come into play in game number 1. It was just a straightforward Zapdos Jirachi from our perspective.
And I think, to be honest, Karl pretty much basically never needs to put it into play unless Isaiah's at 1 prize and Karl's at 2 prizes. He'll put the Lycanroc in the active just to force a Guzma from Isaiah, like in a last-ditch attempt. But usually it's just for the Pikachu and Zekrom and Zoroark matchups where you're going to see those cards really benefit Karl. So he could be using it just for more gusting effects to just deal with extra Absols or extra Jirachis from Isaiah, basically bigger threats than Zapdos themselves. But it's basically a tech card or a few cards for different matchups right now. It was basically just Karl using more Jirachis than Isaiah was that led him to the first game win.
Karl just started Jirachi. Isaiah started Oranguru and was not ever able to get any traction. So Isaiah looking like he's already picking up a much better hand here. He did have to mulligan once, so Karl's going to be able to draw an additional card after he places prizes. But this is already shaping up to be a very different game than game number 1.
For certain. He's got himself a few basic Pokemon. It looks like it wasn't a Jirachi. It was a Tapu Koko Prism Star. At the very least, that does have a 1 retreat cost, so it can be escape boarded onto. And again, Isaiah, when you're going first in a Zapdos mirror match, I think the priority outside of getting more... Oh, he's actually choosing to go second here. Really interesting. In Zapdos mirror matches, like I was going to say, if you go first, Absol is the only thing you can do to try and make it harder for your opponent to take the first prize. So here he's saying, it's so likely that I'll be able to take the first knockout that I'll just be able to go 1 for 1 the entire game and just be ahead. So now it's down to Karl to get his Absol down and try and make life difficult for Isaiah.
That is incredibly smart. I mean, this is one of the decks where you're actually okay with going second because it means that you can get the first knockout of the game. You can really set the pace. But Karl's going to go ahead and Guzma right away to be able to bring that Zapdos up and hopefully lock it there so that Isaiah can't take the first knockout. Obviously, he did not have access to his Absol, so this is plan B. And it's much less likely to work plan B, but still, it's all he had there.
It's similar to an Absol, really. You just put a 2-retreat Pokemon in the active, so now Isaiah needs to have Switch and Guzma, or Switch and Rope, as well as Electro Power, if he is going to use any of those combinations of cards. So Karl's done his best on turn 1 to make it difficult for Isaiah.
I mean, there could also just be, like we can see, second Zapdos and then a single Switch card as well.
Yep, he's there now.
You know.
And it's an 8-card Lily, so Isaiah going first, oh sorry, not going first, really benefiting him here, because he will simply be able to take one knockout first, and that's all Karl did last game to win. And it's so easy. The resources, it's really not strenuous to win this game. You need one Electro Power here and there, or one Guzma here and there. So I think the only awkward thing for Isaiah is there aren't currently any Jirachi in his hand. So this Lily hasn't taken him quite as far as he would have liked. The Energy Lotto one-of in his deck list is going to be coming in again and grabbing another Lightning Energy. That's all he's got really at the moment in his hand already. But he's just thinning an extra Lightning from hand, maybe to draw towards better things in future turns. But at the very least, he can end this one on a Thunderous Assault and take the first prize, leaving Karl with only Zapdos and giving him the headache of having to do some switching shenanigans on his own here.
Yeah, no Jolteon on the side of Isaiah, but 3 Zapdos ready to go, as well as a fresh full 7 cards for the next turn. So a really phenomenal turn 1 from him. And in this game, it's always so advantageous to go first that you don't even really think about ever choosing to go second, but
this hand is
really smart by Isaiah.
Wow, this hand is so bad from Karl. It might be a concession from him straight away as well.
So?
I think honestly it could be. And then the choice then becomes, does Karl choose to go first or second for him now to see if he can win the mirror that way? He's going to Electro Power board and Lily.
These matchups are so tempo heavy. Like the person who gets ahead just stays ahead almost every time.
I guess you just force Isaiah to have a switch card this turn, and it's just over.
That's going to be game. Okay. Yeah. Game 2 over to Isaiah. So we are tied up 1-1. We're going to be going into game number 3. Karl just did not have a Pokemon that he could bench. He didn't have a Nest Ball or an Ultra Ball to find a Pokemon that he could bench. And so 1 and done.
I'm so intrigued. Isaiah bit the bullet and said, I'm going second. I wonder if Karl will follow suit. We haven't seen it happen until now in Zapdos mirror matches. Most people still choose to go first, get more Jirachis going, try and get Absol down, make it hard for the opponent to get their switch cards. But Isaiah already plays 3 Rope, 3 copies of Switch, so it's kind of less valuable for Karl to choose to go second than it would be for Isaiah, because Karl has so many less physical Switch cards. But it really worked out for Isaiah there, and now it's almost a game of chicken now, whether Karl chooses to go first or second. I'm really excited to see who picks.
Is he going to take the bait? I don't think he's going to do it. I think Karl's going to choose to go first. Obviously, that game number 2 was just really incredibly poor for him. He just didn't have the Pokemon that he needed, and we didn't even make it past turn 2. So I think he's going to write that one off and likely try to stick with the same strategy.
I would imagine so. He chose to go first game 1, I believe, unless Isaiah won the coin flip and chose to go second both times.
And we just didn't notice game 1.
And we didn't notice.
Possible.
My goodness, though. I wonder what Karl's thinking right now. You rarely ever see players elect to go second in the Pokemon trading card game. It is such a rare occurrence. You are sometimes behind energy attachments, sometimes behind evolutions, even just getting more uses of abilities over your opponent. Usually there's no reason to go second if you can help it. But here, Karl chose to go second.
Did he really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. And he opens the Jirachi, but Isaiah does not. So that's quite good for Karl. Means that Isaiah is not going to have as much of a benefit of going first here.
Looks like Isaiah's just got attach pass. And I'm surprised he actually attached. If he only has 1 energy card, Karl could conceivably just knock out 1 Zapdos, the one that has the energy on it now.
And then be so far ahead.
Then he's on Instruct and Pray once again.
We see there is a Guzma for Karl, so if he has Zapdos and Energy plus Electro Power.
He's got himself Nest Ball. I think the energy in his hand was actually a fighting one and not a lightning one, which is a little bit awkward for him.
That's unfortunate.
At the very least, I believe he has Volkner, so he could be using Electro Power Zapdos to knock out Isaiah's first. And turns out going second is the play in Zapdos mirror matches by the looks of things. Looking through his deck here, there's going to be Zapdos.
He can Volkner for that lightning energy and an skateboard or escape rope if he doesn't already have it, but he needs the electro power as well to be able to take the Zapdos knockout right now. Stellar
Wishing first, because then he has either out as a live target, and then he's able to Volkner or Guzma this turn. I believe he already has the Switch, the one copy of Switch that he plays in his hand. So it shouldn't be too difficult for him to simply Volkner for the Electro Power. And the Nest Ball is not the worst pickup either, just getting more usage out of Jirachi or having more Zapdos just in backup. So we'll see. Most likely going to be a Volkner here, unless he wants to... I can't see him using Lily. It's not enough cards for him to make sense. Well, Karl hasn't shuffled his deck yet. So I believe it's until you shuffle your deck you're allowed to change.
Okay.
But it could also be
when you take your hand off of it.
Take your hand off the card as well as a potential argument. Because he's still resolving the effect of Nest Ball, because the Nest Ball says shuffle your deck afterwards. So we'll get a quick ruling confirmation from the judges there.
Yeah,
just to see how we want to do this.
The
Zapdos was definitely he had released his hand on Zapdos.
But he had not yet shuffled his deck, which is required to resolve the full effect of Nest Ball.
Yeah. As trying to, I think in these high pressure situations, especially when Karl's, not getting a second Jirachi down, it could be a big deal for him if Isaiah is able to deal with his only Jirachi. This could be very awkward for Karl down the future turns.
And it does not look like Karl will be able to necessarily take the knockout this turn, so perhaps getting that second Jirachi here could be really necessary for him. But it looks like the judges are going to make sure they get the correct ruling here on exactly when you are not allowed to go back into your deck.
Right. Normally when it's cards being played, it's put your hand off, and then it's a played card.
Yeah, like if you're attaching an energy, if you take your hand off of it, the energy stays.
Yes, but for resolving effect of a card, so we know that Karl has always played the Nest Ball, because that's been a played card, but the shuffle effect has not been concluded yet, so I believe it should be that he's able to elect a new target until he shuffles his deck, but it may not be the case. It's down to the judges here. They do a great job. They're running around the tables all day. They're basically just the problem fixers.
I mean, they have to go through rigorous testing to be able to judge at such a high level. So they are going to know better than us how to resolve these situations, but he is going to read the full text of Nest Ball, where it does say, then shuffle your deck at the end.
AJ, he's been commentating before behind the desk, similar to us right now, but now he's taking the role of head judge this weekend, I believe, or definitely one of the higher judges in this event. Very experienced judge. He knows the rules, and
it looks like...
I think he literally read out Nest Ball in full, saying, then shuffle your deck afterwards, which might allow Karl this leeway to change his target.
I mean, Karl's smiling and Isaiah isn't, so it looks to me like the ruling is in favor of Karl here.
And I see a Jirachi on top of his deck now.
Yes, it looks like he can.
There it is.
Okay, so for future reference, with Nest Ball, even if you pick a Pokemon out of your deck, place it onto your bench, and take your hand off of it, as long as you have not yet shuffled your deck, you can still resolve that first effect of Nest Ball.
Yeah, you're still resolving the entire effect. For example, if he had Volknered and not started shuffling his deck, he could have changed that Electro Power choice. It's the same for every card that has a shuffle effect at the end.
I mean, there are just so many little wordings and phrasings within Pokemon that, I mean, we have, like, the people who write the cards sometimes, I assume, must, like, not understand how everything works. It's so complex.
It's strange sometimes when you think it is literally, hey, just read the card. It tells you everything, but it doesn't always tell you everything.
Because when you use Phoenix Burn as a Ho-Oh GX and you pop it back to the bench, suddenly you can use Phoenix Burn again. Like it's a little silly.
So Karl with prize number 1. Isaiah's got a guaranteed prize to keep up with him. And he's got Electro Power as well, so he can guarantee a knockout on this Zapdos. I believe there's been a small time extension as well given for these players for that judging ruling of 3 minutes by the looks of things. And
He did have the switch in hand to be able to move the Jirachi, so then he was able to take the Electro Power off of the Volkner. So that ended up being really, really nice for Karl. They're taking the first prize of the game. We've got that extra 3 minutes now to make sure that we can resolve Game 3. But with 29 minutes on the clock, I mean, these have been going relatively fast.
Isaiah would have loved to get something like an Absol down on his board, but beyond that, all he can do is try and keep up with prize racing. Karl taking a choice band, definitely not his
ideal
card of choice.
Not so choice band.
I don't think he has any ball search cards in his hand. He may not have access to a Zapdos here. This could be awkward. This could be a small opening. Karl's tech cards that you can see in his hand, the Fighting Energy, the Lycanroc, not helpful here. Not even playable cards for his own Lily. Not drawing many cards. He may just be going for Guzma and just hoping to Stellar Wish.
Oh dear.
Here comes Oranguru.
Try to trap the Oranguru in the active position and Stellar Wish and hopefully find something that can search out a Zapdos.
That looked to be another choice band. I don't think that's too helpful. He does get Ultra Ball and Escape Rope.
Okay.
Can't complain with those. He's already spent his support of a turn, and he needs both Ultra Ball and Switching card. So he won't be attacking this turn. And again, Jirachi says shuffle your deck afterwards too. So he's going to take his time to deliberate over this.
Take another look at every single card.
Yeah. He's actually picking up the Escape Rope. By the looks of things, he does have a third Jirachi, I believe, in hand. Yep, there it comes. It's going to be the third Stellar Wish. As I now forced back into a Zapdos, he's taking the one without energy cards, just because he's already holding on to Guzma, so he can guarantee Thunderous Assault next turn. Karl sees another Ultra Ball here, which is pretty nice for him. But again, it feels like he's not attacking this turn, because he's used his supporter on Guzma, so he can't find another switching card as well as this Zapdos here. So he's missed a beat. He chose to go second, got the first prize, but now he's whiffed on turn 2.
Which means that if Isaiah can take a prize next turn, that Isaiah will be ahead.
Yep, and normally when you're ahead, you stay ahead. Karl missed. Isaiah doesn't miss next turn because he's already holding on to Guzma. The only reason why Isaiah could continue to miss is he currently doesn't have any Jirachis, and he's just instructing. So it's not quite as simple always as go ahead, stay ahead. But at the moment, it feels that that could be the case for Karl. He's actually going to attach the Fighting Energy to his Jirachi. He's holding on to Lily for next turn, so he's taking it out of his hand, knowing that Isaiah may need to use Escape Rope or Guzma anyway. This can guarantee a nice retreat on Jirachi, especially you can also combine it with Escape Board and still get around Absol. So it's a small, cute play for Karl under a pressure situation.
But regardless, Isaiah, with the Guzma in hand, is going to be able to take a knockout onto a Jirachi this turn and bench 2 of his own Jirachi.
Yep, he's got Escape Rope as well as Guzma, so he could start Stellar Wishing, or he could immediately Escape Rope and then just go for Cynthia instead. I think you see more cards of Cynthia, but he's opting to go for the... This way he can gust up the Jirachi with the energy and deny the energy card, but it doesn't seem to make that much sense in comparison to simply going for Cynthia that turn. But he's opted to get one more Stellar Wish off. Oh, sorry, one Instruct off.
For a card.
And he can still... Both players here attaching energy to their Jirachis, respecting Absol very cleverly here. And he still has yet to Stellar Wish, so it's not asleep just yet. So this way, Isaiah can use Cynthia for certain. He's got the guaranteed knockout, but if he is able to find any switch card, he's still able to get that value. And that's, again, some cute play from Isaiah there. Knockout guaranteed, switch cards available. Now his board is looking much more safe. If he can add an Absol to this board, it could be additional help for him. Obviously, Karl has tried to prepare for that with a Fighting Energy already, but later down the line, that starts to become very awkward and frustrating. Looks like Isaiah did draw into at least one switch, so he can use Stellar Wish if he wants to this turn.
Does he even have to? Not necessarily. He knows that he's quite far ahead here.
I think the only card he's looking for is Electro Powers for future turns.
Yeah.
That's really about all he needs, so I don't mind him saving these as well. He's going to retreat.
Just going to manually retreat.
Why would... Wait. Why would you do this if you didn't Stellar Wish the first time? Retreat into this? That just made no sense. He just tossed a lightning energy away for no reason.
Yeah,
just for Tapu
he
Koko Prism
could
Star.
have just Stellar Wished and then Escape Rope.
I think he's done it literally for the Tapu Koko Prism Star that's in his hand.
If he didn't already have 2 lightning energy in the discard pile.
Yeah. Maybe in that realm, it makes the most sense.
Power.
He does find Electro Power for the following turn, just in case he wants to deal with a Zapdos rather than a Jirachi next turn. It gives him the options. We know he's now going to be spending Switch this turn. Here comes the Koko Prism Star. Okay, so I guess this gets him Lightning Energy instead of on the Jirachi, on the Zapdos. So this way he's not playing around Absol quite so much, but he's already got so many Switch, Escape Rope, and Guzma in his build. He plays 4 Guzma, 3 Rope, 3 Switch. Absol's not much of a concern for Isaiah's list, so he just wants it on backup attackers at the moment.
Yeah, and that was the only lightning energy he had in the discard, so making that manual retreat from the Jirachi does make sense there. And he's going to Thunderous Assault and knock out the active Jirachi for Karl Peters. So Isaiah goes down to 4 prizes, and the fact that Karl missed just a single knockout there on that previous turn really is going to come back to haunt him here. He's going to Lily for a full 6 cards this turn. He is very likely going to be able to take a knockout, but can he come back from now this deficit? Isaiah is also going to need to miss a knockout on a single turn.
Yeah, and trying to make that happen is going to be difficult now that there is a Rangaroo and 2 Jirachi on Isaiah's field. It would have been a little easier to hope for those things were his turn a little bit weaker, but Isaiah's fully set up now, and it feels like it can just be prize for you, prize for me, and Isaiah's very happy with the outcome. The only other alternate option is Karl, hoping that Isaiah spends a lot of Guzma and Escape Rope early, and maybe a Lycanroc can take 1 attack over a couple turns and take 2 prize cards on its own back, but Isaiah still has so many of those resources remaining for him. Karl picking up the Electro Power so he can at least take the response knockout here.
Okay, he is going to Escape Rope.
So Isaiah knows that there is 1 Electro Power around. If he's hopeful that Karl doesn't have 2 Electro Powers in hand, he could promote his Oranguru and try and take a hit and get even further ahead in the prize race. Or he could just play safe and say, 1 for 1 is still good for me, Karl. I don't mind it at all.
Yeah, I don't see why you would have to take any risks here if you are already ahead, you're already winning the prize race. So for Isaiah, this is just a fine sacrifice to make. Single Electro Power, Thunderous Assault, that will knock out the Zapdos, and Karl now goes down to 4 prizes. But again, every turn that Isaiah is able to take a prize, Karl continues being behind.
And he's already got Rescue Stretcher, Energy, lots of Jirachi uses, Guzmas to, again, just be ahead in the Jirachi war. That is the sort of mini battle that these 2 players go through throughout the game. Even though it is a straightforward prize race, you also have the I have more Jirachis than you approach that you try and go for. He's also going to Nest Ball. So if he can combine Nest Ball for Absol and Guzma out the Jirachi with 1 energy, this is a new hurdle for Karl to get over with only 1 Jirachi out and not able to just escape board retreat it so freely. Isaiah really knows this matchup inside and out. He's doing everything he can to make Karl, you know, even more likely to whiff. Even though he's ahead right now, he's just going to make it even more likely for Karl to miss even more turns of attacking here.
That makes perfect sense. The second that Isaiah is 2 prizes ahead at any point in time, this game is just over. Neither of these players are going to play GX Pokemon, even though they do have options in their deck with the Tapu Koko GX and even the Lycanroc GX for Karl, but they're just liabilities at this point. So this is just a straight up back and forth. I get a prize, you get a prize, and Isaiah's going to take a prize.
And he's pretty happy with it. He's going down to 3 now. As we say, he's ahead. His board state is looking far stronger than Karl's as well at this moment. He has the Absol down, more Jirachis, a Rangaroo, and 2 Zapdos. So anything Karl tries to deal with next turn, it's never stopping Isaiah from taking an attack next turn. So it's all looking pretty rosy for Isaiah. We see Karl dumping a Wobbuffet as well as a nice Rainbow Lycanroc GX that's been plagued in his hand for a few turns.
It looks nice, but it's not doing a whole lot.
It's such a critical card for other matchups, and it's one of the reasons why Karl is at 8-2-1 right now for this weekend. So you can't criticize it in general in his deck list. It's just not a card in this matchup that's helpful. Ultra Ball's out a second Zapdos here. Wants to have backup attackers guaranteed, as we now see the Stellar Wish. He's going to Ultra Ball first, obviously, to take the Pokemon out of the deck to have higher chance of hitting. Just any trainer will do. Right now, he's looking at Guzma and
Looks
Volkner's.
like he found an Electro Power.
Yeah, that's going to be
Very
necessary.
nice.
Means he could now deal with the Absol if he wishes. And that's got to be the priority target.
Even though he's only got the one Jirachi in play.
Oh, he's going for Zapdos.
Maybe not. Okay, maybe because he only has the one Jirachi in play, he's not too concerned with utilizing Stellar Wish over and over again. And if he thinks that he can just knock out both of the Zapdos, then it's more likely that Isaiah is going to have to miss on a knockout on a single turn. Possibly
he believes that that's the only route to get back over the next 3 turns. It's just maybe there's a miss of an attacker physically from Isaiah, because everything else on his board is pretty well equipped and set up. We're going to see the attachment to his Jirachi. Then we're going to see an Electro Power and just a Lily for 4 cards. Isaiah's been sat on that Lily for a little while, and now he doesn't have the guaranteed switch, but he's got the guaranteed knockout if he doesn't get the escape board. But he still does, so he can freely Stellar Wish and try and get some more hand advantage going on his end this turn. Looks like more Electro Powers for him, or another Lily available. Oh, it's a Professor Kukui, not an Electro Power.
Okay.
Kukui not fantastic in this matchup, unless Karl is going to try and maybe bring up a Buzzwole on some sort of escape rope turn to try and make it easy for an Electro Power plus Professor Kukui play.
Yeah, 100 does not equal 110 here, unfortunately, so Kukui not enough to reach through and knock out the Zapdos, but it does give the exact right numbers for the Buzzwole knockout.
So we're just going to see the escape board to his Jirachi. He can start playing down some of these choice bands and the Energy Lotto as well, just to thin the hand. He doesn't ever want to see these cards, but he knows as well, I believe, as we are in this Game 3 situation, that Karl actually doesn't have any hand disruption, so there's also an argument to just hold it in case he draws into Ultra Balls and extra thinning cards, because they are useless right now. We're going to see him simply bring in his Zapdos and Thunderous Assault. Karl's one for the knockout.
Isaiah going down to 2 prizes.
In theory, 2 attacks away, as long as he can hit Jirachis or Electro Powers for Zapdos. So I believe Karl will probably only have this one Jirachi, because he doesn't want to lose to just a couple Guzma.
But if Karl can knock out this Zapdos on this turn, Isaiah will be left without an obvious attacker. I believe he's used 1 Rescue Stretcher already.
Yes. See the Nest Balls galore from Karl now. I think it has to not be a Rockruff or a Jirachi here. I think he's just in way worse shape if he puts one of those down. I think it would only ever have to be another Zapdos here. He's thinking about it, and he's putting one down. Okay, he's going to roll the dice here.
Seems might be risky.
Seems risky, yeah. But he has to take a risk. He's so far behind, he can't just be... I mean, he's already trying to knock out a Zapdos, so I guess his plan anyway is, I only ever win this game if Isaiah misses an attack anyway. Let's just try and get Rockruff down. So I guess with his line of play, it makes sense, because if ever there's any Zapdos attack, he's lost regardless. So let's just try and get the Lycanroc going and hope. He's got the Tapu Koko Prism Star to help him out there as well.
Yeah, he doesn't have the energy in hand, so he's going to need the Tapu Koko Prism with Dance of the Ancients to put an energy on the Zapdos on the bench. And then he needs Escape Rope and Guzma to be able to target this Zapdos for sure, or just a switch.
I believe he's... It's interesting he didn't take the Electro Power there. I think he's having to Guzma this turn, which is a little bit awkward for him. He's counting through resources.
I don't think he has all the pieces he needs to actually knock out the Zapdos this turn.
Dance of the Ancients coming down. 1 to Zapdos, 1 to Rockruff for certain. He's just going to have to Guzma up the Jirachi here, so he's really on a knife edge. If Isaiah is able to have a gusting effect for that Rockruff, he just requires 2 gusting effects to win the game, because the Jirachi can never gain any more hit points in Karl's list. The alternative is, of course, you just need to Thunderous Assault with 1 Electro Power in the active and then have 1 gusting effect. It feels very likely that Isaiah will be able to close this game at this point.
Does look that way. This third one has gone the distance. First 2 obviously were much faster. But there is a Nest Ball for Isaiah. He does have a Zapdos in the deck. So even if Karl had been able to knock out that Zapdos on his previous turn, Isaiah would have had another one.
This is Isaiah closing the door on Karl's win condition, to be honest. He's just putting that second Zapdos down. If you can attach to it as well, just take a prize this turn. It's really looking pretty bleak for Karl. And Isaiah's played very disciplined this game. His board state has been phenomenal in comparison to Karl's. And as we say, it's so resource light to take a prize a turn in a mirror match situation. The Jirachis are so fragile. They can always be Guzma'd and knocked out, or just one Electro Power to respond on Zapdos. It's very, very simple going in mirror match situations when no one's playing anything like Raikou in their deck lists to make life harder for the other player.
He does have the energy for that Zapdos. He's got Energy Lotto as well.
Yep, just going to play it down. May as well thin it from your deck. And if you do have any lightnings in there left, you can pull one of those out too. But looks like just cards that you'd like to Stellar Wish into instead. But this Energy Lotto doesn't help him at this point. He's 2 attacks away. He has 2 energies on the board. That's all you need. So this Energy Lotto, not too helpful right now. Surprisingly, he's opted to play 1 Energy Lotto over just an extra basic Lightning Energy.
Yeah.
Just to have extra Stellar Wish outs, I guess.
Yeah, something you can search.
But the Energy Lotto is not guaranteed either, so it feels strange. We're going to see the Stellar Wish number 1 from Isaiah here, as he does try and close the jaws on this game. He's just going to grab a second Guzma, so that's 2 gusting effects that he has guaranteed in his hand right now. If he just picks up Rockruff, he can pick up a Jirachi next turn, and it's just over.
2 attackers ready to go. And with 2 Pokemon on the bench that have less than 80 HP, now Isaiah does not need the Kukui or an Electro Power to actually get the knockout. And that is kind of why we were hesitant about Karl playing down that Rockruff, because it does just give another Pokemon that Isaiah can knock out without the use of damage buffing effects. However, he was behind already. He needed to hope that this Rockruff sticks around for a turn so he could evolve it into the Lycanroc. But that is not going to happen here.
Yeah, I think it made sense if he was able to just retreat out his Jirachi. It would have been fine, because he was hoping that Isaiah would have to find Lightning, Zapdos, Gusting Effect all at once. But the fact that he had to use a Guzma of his own and deal with the Jirachi rather than this Zapdos, it was so likely that Isaiah was still able to get a response attack like he just did, that it really does look difficult for Karl to win at this point. I think if he's doing anything, it's trying to... Well, he can't even really take a prize because it's so easy for Isaiah. He needs to get himself down Absol at the very least. Force a Gusting Effect. He knows he already loses to Guzma effectively, so benching the Rockruff is fine. Drawing more cards from Lily, it looks like, unless he wants to Volkner.
Skateboard onto the Jirachi, but Absol is still on the bench for Isaiah.
Oh, here comes a Tapu Koko GX using Aero Trail. Just to draw more cards from Lily here.
Does find 5 cards.
I believe that's Escape Rope. Thunder Mountain comes down. He can actually attack with his Tapu Koko GX this turn. Sky High Claws is live. Again, force Isaiah to have Guzma. There it is, though.
All right, that's going to be game number 3 over to Isaiah Williams. That was a really nice final turn by Karl, forcing Isaiah to have the Guzma there, but we can obviously see it seems like a never-ending flow of Guzmas when they need it with this deck, but that's just the way that it is built, with 4 Jirachis to be able to search out the proper card